Yeah, I enjoy Poko Roso. I mean, it kind of is what it is. Like, I don't think it's his best film by far, but I don't think it's his worst. And,
I
like, if
guess
I had to pick a worst, honestly, I would say it's Spirited Away.
What?
And,
Wait,
yeah.
you're not being sarcastic, are you?
now here I would call you a communist, except Miyazaki himself was also a communist, so it doesn't quite work.
Welcome to another episode of the Wave Motion Canon Weekly Anime Podcast. I am your host, CJ Hitchcock, and this week I am joined by Josh Dunham and IBCF. Go ahead and say hello, fellas.
Hello.
Hey.
Alright, so this week we are going to be talking about the big news. In case you hadn't heard, it's big news. No one saw this coming, ever. Not in a million years. This has never happened before, you guys. Like, you know how Miyazaki said he was going into retirement? Well, he changed his mind. He's back. Jesus is back. The Jesus of anime is back.
Holy.
He is directing again. He is back at Studio Ghibli, and he is directing movies and such. He has come back to save anime. What are your guys' thoughts?
Oh man, I never would have expected that.
I want to know who pushed the rock away from his tomb and let him out. That's what I'm curious about.
I just kind of... There's a really good comic out there. I've tweeted it a couple of times where it's a picture of Miyazaki's head on a cat, kind of going back and forth inside of a door, being like, I'm leaving anime, I'm gonna come back. Like, that's Miyazaki. He's constantly going back and forth, and this is like the third time that he's come back. Like, I don't think I'm overestimating that number when I say it.
Maybe the
I know
fourth
that
time. Didn't he say he was going to retire after, like, Mononoke way back? One of those.
So I'm actually looking up because I know he's done this a couple times, right? So we all know this. This is why it's kind of funny. This is why we're talking about it. I'm kind of curious. Has this been his longest hiatus, retirement, whatever you want to call it?
Well, because like the last time he said he was going on retirement was after Wind Rises was done, which is a great movie. I love it quite a bit. But that was like back in 2014, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's been at least 3 years.
And it seemed like a kind of a finale movie, capstone to his career. Just The Wind Rises, I'd say.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I really liked about it, because, like, it really is kind of a combination of everything that Miyazaki really loves and has shown throughout all of his work, which is basically, you know, flight and aeronautical stuff and kind of mushy romances. And all these things kind of combined together, along with, like, historical pieces as well. Like, all these things kind of come together into one movie that is just perfectly encapsulates his style and his, pretty much his love of just everything about animation in this one really, really nice, sweethearted movie. And, I thought it was, like, this really great film that kind of perfectly captures his style more than anything else that he's done. And, you know, again, like, I thought it was just a really good note to leave off on, and now he's back and doing more stuff, and it's not really announced yet what he's going to be doing next. But, I mean, so I think that's going to be the big question. Like, are you guys looking forward to seeing another Miyazaki film, or do you, like, what exactly do you think he has left to cover at this point?
I feel like Miyazaki at this point may be the Dark Souls of anime. He just keeps coming back, You know, he is the next Miyazaki of anime. You know, he's pushing the old Miyazaki Mamoru Hosoda out of the way. He's pushing the newer Miyazaki Makoto Shinkai out of the way. So now Miyazaki is officially the new Miyazaki, which is a completely honest way of looking at it, I feel. I mean, it sounds a little silly, but that's literally what's going on here. You know, I just want to see this guy actually do something that had the same piss and vinegar as his earlier works. Not that some of the stuff that he's done recently has been completely bad or anything like that, but you can't look at Nausicaa and then look at Howl's Moving Castle and say, oh goodness gracious, yes, it's still as exciting as it used to be.
Well, Howl's Moving Castle is like probably his least good movie. Probably. I mean, that's kind of an unfair
Poko Roso.
comparison. Oh, come on.
You're going to start fights with... You're going to start fights with that comment.
What?
I kind of agree with freaking, what was his name there? Oshii, where he's like, at the end of the film, Miyazaki should have pulled off the pig mask and said, I'm sorry.
Oh, come on. CJ, what do you think? Poko Roso's a good film.
Yeah, I enjoy Poko Roso. I mean, it kind of is what it is. Like, I don't think it's his best film by far, but I don't think it's his worst. And, like, if I had to pick a worst, honestly, I would say it's Spirited Away.
What?
And
wait,
yeah.
You're not being sarcastic, are you?
Now, here I would call you a communist, except Miyazaki himself was also a communist, so it doesn't quite work.
Oh, good grief. Who are you? Well, okay, so, I mean... Ponyo, that was pretty recent. That was... What was the last few films? Wind Rises, and then Ponyo was before that.
Yep.
Ponyo, and...
Let me just check his filmography real quick.
I mean, my favorite Miyazaki things have not been his smash breakout, like, oh, everybody recognizes him for this, which is kind of a hard thing. I mean... relative, obviously, everything taken in relativity, because anything Miyazaki does gets instant notice and appreciation because his name is on it. But I mean, I look at, as much as I do enjoy Howl's Moving Castle, I really feel like it's a film without a message, which is almost a death blow when it's a Miyazaki film. You know what I'm saying?
And that's kind of the thing that I really like about Howl's Moving Castle, is that it is just kind of this fantasy film. Like, that's kind of the thing that I like about it. Like, it's not... Like, this is probably going to make me sound like a Luddite, but, like, you know, it's a film that doesn't require me to think too much about it and just kind of sit back and enjoy the visuals and everything that's going on. And that's kind of what I like about that, because it just kind of, it's whimsy for the sake of being whimsy, and I enjoy that every now and then. You know, that's not to say that that makes it a better film, but I don't think that's what makes that film bad.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
not
it's
enjoyable.
It's not a bad film or a not enjoyable film by any means. It's just, like... I mean, he's usually really good about story structure, and that's kind of the odd one out. Like, the story there is kind of a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole entire film was a mess. It was supposed to be directed by Mamoru Hosoda, and then Miyazaki came back out of retirement and literally kicked Hosoda out of Ghibli. So that's when Hosoda went to do the One Piece film. He went back to Toei. Toei took him back, and that's when that whole thing happened. So, I mean, like... it's just he jumped aboard like halfway through the film, and it was just, like you said, it's a mess for more than one reason. But like, Nausicaa is probably my favorite Miyazaki work. Miyazaki, some of his manga has been really, really good. I'm not even talking about Nausicaa, like Journey of Shuna, really, really, really good. It's kind of the prototypical Nausicaa in a lot of ways. The same with People of the Desert. Or People of the Sand, I guess, depending on how you like to translate it. But, some of his manga has been pretty good. Like, People of the Sand is I think it's technically his first published manga, and that was published in a communist newspaper in Japan, which, obviously, that being said, it was filled with some nice commie rhetoric back in the day. Miyazaki had some pretty strong beliefs, and... I thought that made for some pretty good film. Like when he made Nausicaa, he realized, oh wait, she's, in a higher class. And that actually kind of caused some strife for him. Looking at, like, On Your Mark, that came out right around the same time as the Om Shinrikyo gas attacks, and you have this imagery of police dudes breaking into this spot and just mowing down with machine guns these cultists. You know, like, there's some pretty striking imagery in a lot of his films, and they always seem to have some sort of socio political, environmental, maybe environmental is the wrong word, but naturalistic message to him. So when you grow to expect that from the man, and then you get something that doesn't quite meet the bill, naturally, like you said, it's the odd bird out, that sort of thing. I do enjoy Howls, but I don't know if I consider it, like a prototypical Miyazaki film. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying it kind of falls outside of that because he adopted. It's the bastard child of Miyazaki films, really.
Yeah, I mean, he does a lot of different types of films, though. So generalizing might be like Totoro is, just as equally considered a classic as, Nausicaa or Mononoke, but they're very, very different. It's a very quiet film about just two little girls, while Mononoke is like about a full-scale war between nature and man. So, I mean, like the prototypical Miyazaki film, like maybe generalizing it would be a little dangerous to do that. And,
I would disagree with you on that one because to me, all those films there have like a very, very central theme. Like, I feel like if anything, Miyazaki is probably one of the safest things to place and compartmentalize in a box and just label. Like, hey, this is Miyazaki. He put it right across the box instead of fragile. It's Miyazaki. I mean, the man really enjoys nature. He really enjoys, his contact with the earth, whether it be a spiritual one, whether it be one as connecting as a young child or as an older gentleman or as an ancient being of great power, sort of thing. You look at Nausicaa, like that's pretty obvious. You look at Princess Mononoke, which is literally Nausicaa 2.
Also airplanes. He really likes airplanes.
Right, but that's the cool thing about it, though, is like even when he depicts flight and airplanes and all this sort of thing, it's still very much attached to this naturalistic view of the world. I mean, he is taking this from a spot. His family was independently wealthy because they made wingtips for the Zero fighters of World War II. So his family's making money on these planes. Naturally, planes became a thing for him. Inserts that into his films, and it's just, it doesn't come across as like, say for example, you watch Your Name, it's like, okay, there are tons of trains everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand why Shinkai did that, but Miyazaki does it in a way that's almost way, I don't know, like I look at Nausicaa's glider, I look at Howl and all of his flight, I look at even Wind.
Oh yeah, because you have like
the gyrocopter.
Yeah, it feels so much more natural, if that makes sense. Like, even though these are all machines,
Well, and not only that, but like you'll have like Kiki's Delivery Service and My Neighbor Totoro. You'll have flying scenes in that where it just kind of comes across as
magical.
Magical and like something that you would actually see out in nature flying about, and that's kind of the the beauty that he captures in like his aerodynamic stuff. That's really, really great. Even Castle in the Sky. The way that the machinery works in that, it feels very organic, and it's like that's one of the big highlights for me in his works. When it comes to just kind of like things that I kind of point out, is that everything feels living and breathing in the worlds that he makes in his movies. Because like even with Spirit of the Way, which I've never really been big on Spirit of the Way, but like it is still like a really good film. Because like one of my favorite scenes in that is like this scene where she's in the Chihiro is in the little like where the boiler room is at, and she needs to go from one place to another, and she takes the time to stop and put on her shoes. Like, I really like that little bit of animation that's there, because like she really kind of like she'll sit down, she'll grab her shoes and like put them on, and just before she runs off she'll like tap them with the bit of her toe and stuff like that. Again, like it feels like even though she's in a hurry, she still puts them on very realistically, and that is something that I've always really liked about how he directs character movement and stuff like that. And like that's one thing I've always really liked about his films. It's just, again, it's those tiny little attentions to detail that really come out in his works above everybody else's.
Please.
So. I think the other thing that I've come to really enjoy with Miyazaki is that a lot of his films come from a very honest place. I don't feel like Miyazaki at any point in time is ever lying to his audience or trying to sell them a cheap experience. Some directors will do that, and most of the time you can tell, sometimes you can't. But when you're sitting there and you're watching a Miyazaki film, it's very real, despite the fact that some very fantastic and unreal things are happening on screen. I think part of that, I think Dan is probably going to have a lot to say on this, is really the fact that he is so in control of all his films. I think he is probably the closest thing, probably the closest thing we have in anime to a true auteur.
Well, I don't know, because I think there are a lot of auteurs in anime. It's just I don't think they're very well known here in particularly America, because let's face it, a lot of Americans don't care where their cartoons are coming from. But it definitely feels like Miyazaki was the one who was able to put his stamp on a lot of the stuff that he made, and I think a big part of that had to do with him, that Spirited Away, winning the Academy Award in 2001, and it was one of the first times where people kind of took animation seriously here in America, and I think because of that, Miyazaki was able to jump onto that board as a big name here in the West, among all the other animators that are out there, because he was one of the first people to be put on this really high pedestal as an auteur that would be acknowledged here in America for his animation.
I mean, I hear what you're saying there, but I think the thing is, anime naturally, by the way it's made, is very resistant of the auteur theory, because quite simply, who is the original author of a scene? Is it the animator? Is it the storyboarder? Is it the scriptwriter? Scenario? Is it the layout person? Because they are pretty responsible for a lot of things as well. The traditional auteur theory, you could look at the director and say, well, the director had complete control. They told the actor how to do this, how to do, so there's a case to be made there. But with anime, especially when you look at, movements like Sakuga, where people are literally trying to credit individual animators for a cut, like who's more responsible in that case? The writer, the director, the episode director? Is it the actual animator? Is it the layout? Is it the key animator, or was it the in-betweener? Did the in-betweener do something extra that we weren't aware of? Or, was it the animation director? You got so many people working on it at once. It's a group thing, so it kind of resists the foundation of the auteur theory. But like Miyazaki being so ingrained in his work, redrawing so many things and being the sole director sometimes, the sole key animation director, like he had such an iron grip on things.
Well, now I mean, like, if you compare it to Western anime, I mean, animation in general, yeah, it's a very collaborative medium, but I'd say at least if you compare it to like Western animation, anime, you actually have the directors tend to have much more of a voice than American animators do, or used to at least. I mean, the layout is very controlled by the directors. I mean, the animators do their own layouts in Japan. That's one thing. So, and then the animators usually do everything in the scene, including both the character animation and the effects. And so, sorry, I'm just trying to say that, like, Japanese animators tend to have a lot more control than at least other animation in the world people do.
Well, and there's also a part of me where, like, I don't think, like, when it comes to directing animation, people are like, I want these two characters to fight, and then they just kind of, like, walk away and leave, like, the animators are the ones who have to decide how the fight goes, like, I firmly believe, like, there's a lot of storyboarding and a lot of planning that goes on and whatnot, and I do think that like, while you do have certain projects where a lot of the storyboarding and the director aren't always kind of in the same room, but with Miyazaki, he definitely seems like he's completely there and in control of everything that's going to be going on. So, like, I kind of like to go back to the scene that's in Spirited Away that I was talking about with Chihiro putting on her shoes. I firmly believe that wasn't just an animator sitting in the room being like, I'm going to add this little extra thing in the animation. Like, I firmly believe, they had this moment where they were storyboarding and being like, hey, let's go ahead and throw in this, Miyazaki being the person who would say that, and, be like, okay, I want you to go ahead and do this now. And that's kind of how I view what happened, but
with
then
Miyazaki,
again...
yeah, probably. But I'm saying, like, if you were to go to, freaking Red Line, I doubt that everything in Red Line was just completely and utterly planned out to the T. There's probably some, relatively speaking, loose cuts in there where people were allowed to kind of do their thing.
So that's what you're saying. Like, lots of people doing their own thing, kind of, so it's not just one singular vision.
Exactly. So look at Space Dandy. Like, we all seen Space Dandy. Could you really say that, oh, wow, Space Dandy is the complete work of one auteur? No, you couldn't. Now, the flip side is, the way Space Dandy is organized is you could say, wow, this is a great demonstration of a particular animator or a particular director. So, in a way, it does actually kind of support the auteur theory.
Well, by episode per episode, yeah, not the whole show.
Bingo. But here's the thing, like, you look at Naruto or you look at Bleach, most traditional anime, long-running anime, or even something that's 12 episodes, is it Mario Kata to blame, or is it the director? Like Kisniver, who's the auteur of Kisniver? Because Mario Kata wrote every single episode of that, but at the same time, who was the animation director? Who was the series director? So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I'm not saying, like, oh, yeah, it's just completely resistant, and then, like, there's no way you can use that to describe it, because I think that's also a false statement. But I'm just saying, like, out of anime, with it being such a collaborative effort, even though we have these rock stars who are very well organized, who are very well recognized, I think the thing is, Miyazaki still stands head and shoulders above the rest because of his level of involvement. I get you hear all the time when people are talking about animators, they're interviewing animators who used to work at Ghibli, they're saying, like, yeah, it's super impressive. Like, they like the idea of working with Miyazaki, but they don't actually like working with Miyazaki because of how oppressive he can be.
And that's kind of what I was going to segue into, was saying, like, there's a part of me that thinks, like, yeah, Miyazaki's a really great director and stuff like that, but at the same time, he seems like a control freak who's really hard to work for and appease to. And just, I think we've all seen the clips of what he thinks about CGI animation in particular.
I mean, the man isn't wrong about that.
I mean, I think he was a bit harsh to those poor creators, but,
Well, of course, but I guess the thing is, looking at it, though, and I'm not trying to, like, defend Miyazaki, because, one, I don't think the man needs defending. He can stand on his own. But two, like, if you have a vision, go for it. And I think Miyazaki has a wonderful vision that's reached thousands and thousands, if not millions of people, and it totally makes sense that he would have literally the elephant balls to go in and say, no, we're going to do it my way because I'm fucking Miyazaki. So that makes sense. I don't think necessarily it's a nice way to treat people, but, he's such a driven individual. You read about, like, when he was younger, he was basically like, fuck Tezuka, just because he couldn't be Tezuka, so he tried to do something different. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just his personality to begin with.
Well, he's a total workaholic. We all know that. I mean, he'll never stop working, probably, until he either physically can't or, just dies. So
yeah, becomes one with the earth, finally.
Right. And also, he's a guy who can do everything. He can animate stuff really well. He's probably, if he's still animated, he could be one of his own best animators. That's like one thing. He does, like, all the layouts in his films, I think, like, for the whole thing, and probably storyboards, most of them too, if not all.
He does storyboard his own films, yeah. And he's also the character designer for most of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, probably they all look like they always look like Miyazaki characters in Miyazaki films, so most likely.
And I think that's also a really kind of interesting thing when it comes to how not just Miyazaki films, but how Ghibli movies get presented here in America. Because, like, I was trying to think, like, what was the last Miyazaki film I saw in theaters after or before Wind Rises, and my first thought was like, oh, The Secret of Our Arte. And I was just like, well, wait, no, that wasn't a Miyazaki film, that was a Ghibli film that got brought here. But the way that that film was advertised, Miyazaki's name was all over it, and which doesn't seem quite fair. But,
right.
And that's kind of the thing, because like with a lot of the films that I kind of grew up, watching because they were Ghibli films, things that I ended up really liking, things like Whispers of the Heart and Cat Returns, and things like that. Like, it was kind of when I started looking into animators a lot more seriously, or at least animation directors, finding out that those guys weren't, finding out that Miyazaki didn't direct those films was kind of world-shattering to me, because I had thought for the longest time that that Miyazaki was the one who made those films, and it wasn't the case. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because it kind of feels like, with the way that a lot of the Ghibli films are distributed here in America, it kind of seems like they're trying to pull the wool over a lot of people's eyes in terms of trying to get people to see it because of the name recognition that Miyazaki has.
As a superstar, I mean, that's all there is to it. People
but
name
still,
brand recognition.
It's still kind of frustrating, because like I would like to see more type of like directors get their name in the spotlight when it comes to animation. Because, again, like, you pretty much have Miyazaki here in America, and maybe Tanamaki a little bit, if you're kind of stretching the terms of, like, what it means to be a popular director in animation. But it's, like, that seems like that's pretty much it. And it seems like if any anime film's going to do well here in America, his name needs to be attached to it, or else it's not going to work. And I don't know, because, like, I am unprepared for this research and argument, but like, Your Name didn't really seem to do all that well here in America when it came out here. Maybe that's just me being very cynical about the film in general, but just, it kind of seems like if they could have found a way to sneak Miyazaki's name into it, like, this was a film seen by Miyazaki who liked it quite a bit and had very nice things to say, people would go out and see it in droves.
Well, didn't they call him
because his name was attached.
Didn't they call him the next Miyazaki?
Yeah, Makoto Shinkai.
Yeah.
That's
well,
the
was
way
that
to do it.
a part of? Was that a part of the U.S. marketing for it? Because I don't remember that. Well,
not
to be fair,
officially.
I don't remember.
No, but like, I think there was an A&N cast or something like that where that got brought up. It became a big topic in the anti-Twitter sphere for a couple of days, if I recall correctly, and people were all, they're always trying to label who's the next Miyazaki. I think finally that Miyazaki has come out of retirement, we can at least not have that conversation anymore. For me, I was always waiting for Takashi Koike to just step up and become the next Miyazaki, but we just gotta wait for that. But I mean, I guess my thing is, look, this is a man who's done a lot of stuff. He's like one of the OGs of anime, and I think the thing is, when you're looking at anime, a lot of these new directors are directly influenced by other anime, whereas back in the day, you were influenced by other things. Tezuka was influenced by film, and that's why when you read his manga, that's when you watch his anime, it feels a little bit different than just like regular quote-unquote anime. The same thing with Tomino, same thing with, I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Well, Tezuka is also influenced by Disney films, too, so it's kind of continuing
and not just
there.
that. Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah, and I don't want to poo-poo that by any means, but I guess, like...
But yeah, I mean, I guess you're
not only
saying
that,
Tezuka had broader taste than just cartoons.
Then, like
it wasn't
Imaishi.
just cartoons that Tezuka was really into, too. Like, he was also, like, really big into literature, and not just, like, Japanese literature. Like, he read a lot of Russian literature, as well as a few things from America. Like, again, if you read the Tezuka story, that giant manga that I still haven't finished yet, that's a big part of it. Like, he used to read a novel every single day on his way to school while he was riding the bus. So like he was a really big reader of the arts, and he would even like a lot of his earlier works were just kind of like retellings of classical books that he read. And it like, because again, like I think that was the big thing with Tezuka in particular, was that his viewpoints on entertainment were so much wider than just animation, that he kind of brung everything together to improve animation. And that's kind of like how I see how he kind of changed the whole entire like sphere of things, because you know, a lot of the times, especially back in the day, they were pretty much just, you know, gag strips and whatnot. And he was the one who would be like, no, we can tell stories with these things. And
Tezuka's family also had a theater in their house, so I mean,
yeah, next door, yeah,
it's crazy.
Next door to them.
But I think one of the interesting things is, despite Miyazaki being such an iron-fisted communist ruler of anime, I suppose, he actually had some pretty affluential animator friends who didn't fit the bill, what you would expect from the standard Miyazaki fare. Like, one that comes straight to mind, working on Nausicaa, was Yoshinori Kaneda. You know, the guy who practically put the city of Sakuga on the map, you know. This is a guy who did a lot of really cool things. He really drove some different techniques. I mean, he was a god animator, you know, and yet he works so well with Miyazaki that the two became friends. I mean, that's how Hideaki Anno met him, you know. Just like, there's so many stories just around Miyazaki. Like, even if you take Miyazaki's films away, just the fact that he existed in the anime sphere and influenced so many people is like, you cannot dispute this man's influence. It's interesting. It's hyper interesting. And I think a really good book, if people are interested, or a series of books, would be the what do they call that, the Miyazaki memoirs there. What was it called? The name escapes me, so I apologize. But there were 2 books released, kind of Starting Point was the name of it. Starting Point was the name of the first one. And it's literally just a collection of translated interviews from Miyazaki. Absolutely worth picking it up if you can get your hands on it.
Yeah, well, Miyazaki, I mean, he was around since the early days of Toei. And he was working with all the biggest names, like, even back then. So pretty much anyone who's anyone in anime from, like, the 60s, Miyazaki's probably been in contact with one way or another, and they have worked on the same films. And since then, that's probably been true. You know, just every decade, every new generation of animators, a lot of people have been in contact with him. He's just such a massive talent. Talent attracts talent, I'd say.
Yeah, and so much of the anime industry is who you know. I mean, this is the guy who can have a freaking Shinra Ohira cut in the middle of his, for all intents and purposes, you know, Japanese blockbuster Hollywood film.
Right.
You know, Howl's Moving Castle, and it's like, oh, it's just a normal thing. For better or for worse, I suppose, depending on what your perspective is there. But I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of things about Miyazaki that are being said has already been said. Like, right now I'm in the middle of writing a piece just focusing kind of on Nausicaa and how Nausicaa kind of shapes all of Miyazaki's future works. But I find the more I just write about this, I end up going into like different directions, and like, oh, how did, you know, this shape Hideaki Anno? How did this, you know, change Joe? He got, what was his last name? Joe, the composer there.
Oh, it starts with an H.
It's Higaishi or something like that.
Hisaishi, something like that.
No, I'm thinking of the name here. I can't remember. But and everyone's like yelling right now, screaming into the microphone. I can't remember for the sake of me.
That's right there.
Is that Hisaishi? Yeah. Oh, my bad. I'm not a true anime fan. I've been discovered.
Oh, look at that. Look at that website. Just Google his name, and then they call him the John Williams of Japan.
There you go. He's the next Miyazaki. So,
well, no, Miyazaki. Like, you know, the next Miyazaki the next John Williams.
There you go. I just want to know who's going to be the next John Lasseter of Japan.
Oh my gosh!
So.
Please no.
Well, I want to know who's going to be the next Michael Bay of Japan.
Who's the first Michael Bay of Japan?
Oh, that's a good question, man. Oh.
I'm trying to think of someone who makes big dumb action things that are really bad, but a lot of people watch them anyway. Sounds like something, I don't know, like Madhouse or Mappa would do.
Maybe. Who's ever directing The Reflection?
I don't know if that's actually being directed. It's just a bunch of people drawing things and just sticking them together.
Yeah, that would be accurate, I think.
It's like, hey guys, I drew the superhero thing. Okay, I drew the superhero thing. Okay, so you go first, then me. Oh, okay, and here's how the episode is. Done.
To get back to Miyazaki, like, he's just... I don't know, because, like, there's a part of me that's, like, you know, I'm always willing, you know, to be like, hey, Miyazaki's coming out with a new film. Cool, I'll go see it. You know, but at the same time, I'm not all that excited about Miyazaki coming out of retirement and stuff like that, because there was a part of me that was kind of looking forward to seeing who was going to take his place.
Well, that's interesting because we got a question here on the Patreon, if you don't mind. I think this might be a pretty good drive into that conversation. So Lum Ramayasha says, do you think Studio Ghibli can survive without Miyazaki? Outside of co-producing The Red Turtle, they seem to be in limbo without much work since 2014, with several staff jettisoning to form Studio Ponok. I know that since Miyazaki's return, they've received a bunch of applications from people who want to work there, but when the time comes where Miyazaki won't be there, what will be the future for Ghibli?
Doesn't matter.
I mean, okay, so let's pretend Miyazaki, you know, God forbid, you know, goes the way of all Earth, right? Miyazaki fades away, becomes dust again, and then Isao Takahata, being older, follows right after him. Like, who else is going to direct at Studio Ghibli? Fucking Goro? You want another Earthsea? Like, I'm pretty sure after that, Miyazaki pulled his son aside and spanked him out behind the barn and said, that's bad, don't do it. Grabbed his a 40-year-old adult son and pulled out the belt and spanked his ass.
I mean, to be fair, I think he does that with all of his animators when things aren't going his way.
Yeah, it's probably accurate. I mean, he smokes. He probably burns them with the cigarette butts or some shit.
Well,
just walks around the office slapping coffee out of people's hands.
I was going to mention that Arietti guy, Hiromasa Yonibayashi. Yeah, but it looks like he's gone to Ponok too now. He did Mary and the Witch's Flower, right?
Yes. But the funny thing is, like, Miyazaki, if I'm not mistaken, like, co-wrote that film. The Mysterious World of Arietti or whatnot.
True.
When you stop and think of it, like, everything has his fucking fingerprints on it, you know.
Well, not the Takahata films, probably. He doesn't do anything with Takahata.
Yes, that's true. Takahata's the only one who escapes the singularity that is Miyazaki. I just who is Isao Takahata trading up? You know, who's the next Isao Takahata? Why don't we have that conversation? You know, who's the next Miyazaki? That's great, because even if Hosoda is the next Miyazaki, even if fucking Makoto Shinkai is the next Miyazaki, then what? Like, that doesn't do Ghibli any good, because Ghibli's not about training animators and becoming a great studio. They're literally about just serving Miyazaki. And to be honest, like, that's how the studio was founded. Studio Topcraft. No, so I mean, for those who don't know, Miyazaki was originally doing manga for Animage, right? The magazine that we all read now for interviews, the one that you can see translated onto our site all of the time, used to feature...
Nice plug.
Yes, exactly, right? The one, used to have the Nausicaa manga all the time, so they made a deal and said, hey, look, give us a feature. And he's like, well, I'll give you this manga as long as you promise not to, force me into making it into a movie. Well, they forced him into making it into a movie. And so he adapted the first half of Nausicaa or whatnot, kind of gave it the Akira treatment, I suppose. But, and then after that, the studio that they used, so the publishing company, was it Takama Shoten or something like that? I forget the name of it, but basically they're the one who grabbed Joe Hisaishi, put him in there, so he started doing film scores. Basically, with that money, Miyazaki was able to purchase Studio Topcraft, which was dying, and renamed it Studio Ghibli. So, like, the founding of that was literally just to let Miyazaki make his shit. So when you stop and think of it that way, like, Ghibli's not a studio. It's like an extension of Miyazaki's body. It's like the black tendrils from Princess Mononoke. That's really what Ghibli is.
Yeah, like, it is really kind of hard to see who exactly is going to be, because, like, honestly, like, once he's gone, because, like, it's kind of like asking who's going to be the next Kon, Satoshi Kon, because, like, once he was gone, he was gone. Like, no one really kind of replaced his style, and I think that's going to be the thing that's going to happen with the Miyazaki and Ghibli, is that once he's gone from this earth, I don't think there's going to be anyone who's going to, completely replace him. It's why I think asking who is the next Miyazaki is kind of a pointless question, because quite frankly, I don't want another Miyazaki, because we have a Miyazaki, and the Miyazaki that we have is great. I want someone else who has their own sense of style, the way that they animate to, kind of come out on top and be like the new thing that's coming out. Like, that for me is always kind of the thing that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for someone to, absorb somebody else's talent and, haphazardly apply it to their own thing. I want someone to do their own thing.
It's essentially a Highlander competition. You have to behead the other. There can only be one.
Well, I agree, CJ, but they're asking just about Ghibli, right? So, I mean, Ghibli, it might survive some, diminished form, but it obviously won't be the same without Miyazaki. And Takahata, I'm pretty sure, is more or less retired by now. Yeah, has he been doing anything?
No, he wants to make another film about, I don't want to call them wet nurses, but essentially this idea of women or young women who used to take care of the younger children right around the time of, Imperial Japan type thing. So he has some very interesting ideas, kind of following in the same vein, the spiritual successor of Princess Kaguya. But, I mean, like, the man's so old and it takes him so damn long to make a film, like... this is probably the last film, Princess Kaguya, and that came out in 2014. So, but to kind of just real quick, I guess another plug in there. But you asking like who's going to be the next Kon, CJ? Supposedly, Kon himself thought that Yoshimi Itazu, the guy who's actually directing Ballroom, he thought that he was selected to be the guy to direct The Dream Machine. Which is really interesting because now he's doing Ballroom, and if you guys want to read my write-ups on Ballroom, that's also on the site too. So this guy was selected to be the next Kon by Kon himself, but he's not the next Kon. And I think the thing is, there's a lesson to be learned there, because even if Miyazaki appointed somebody, i.e. Goro, like, hey son, be me when I die, well, that's not going to happen because anime is not like that. Like, no one was looking for the next Yoshinori Kaneda. But Hiroyuki Imaishi stepped up and did his own thing, which is very Kaneda-esque, but you don't hear anyone saying, oh, who's going to be the next, freaking, I don't know.
Well, Kaneda already had like 1 million imitators, so they didn't need to ask who the next
I would argue that there's a great amount of Miyazaki imitators. There's a huge amount of Miyazaki imitators. Now, the question is, relatively huge, obviously, because, there are more animators than there are directors. But, I mean, like, we have everyone's always arguing who they think the next Miyazaki will be, and there's always like 2 or 3 candidates. Like, the fact that there are 2 or 3 candidates, I think, seals that question for me. I don't think Studio Ghibli will survive after Miyazaki's actually gone, after Takahata's gone. I mean, as it is, they already left, so that way they won't, so they can be freed from their shackles. Like, I think what will happen is that the people we understand as being Ghibli will no longer be Ghibli. and Ghibli will be like a mark in history. It will be like a one of those Rosetta Stones where we go back and say, yeah, man, remember the good old days back when oppressive Miyazaki was still making movies?
Well, they were good movies, though.
Great films, but I mean, it's just the way that whole studio is set up, the way Miyazaki is, the way Takahata is. They don't want to train anyone else. They just kind of want to do their thing. Like, in a way, it's very self-gratifying, but the thing is, it's good ideas. It's very well, it's good film. And I can understand that creating stuff is self-gratifying to some degree. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a negative aspect, but...
I just want to add, it's not like I don't think they don't train anyone. They have a lot of extremely good, some of the best, they only take the best animators in Japan and Ghibli for their films. And I think, the question is kind of is Ghibli going to survive? No, probably not, but that also means that all these top, some of the best animators, Atsuko Tanaka, all these people will be, in other places in the anime industry, and that's going to be a net positive, yeah?
I agree with that. I think here's what's going to happen is that Studio Kara will absorb some of them because Hideaki Anno has that relationship. I would be surprised if we didn't see some of them go to Production IG.
We saw a bunch of them working on Your Name.
Right. And then I guess, if they form their own studio too, I could totally see that. Is maybe as soon as, what will probably happen? Miyazaki will die, and the next film that Ghibli makes will be a retrospective animated film of Miyazaki.
You're probably right.
Miyazaki would, he'll accomplish what I cannot and literally become anime.
Yeah, that actually sounds likely.
So, maybe that's a little bit cynical. I'd still go and watch it.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a good film. How could they... when he goes, there's going to be probably at least a film, probably an animated film
or maybe
about
a TV special or something, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't think Studio Ghibli has a future after Miyazaki. I think the proof that, look at 2014 all the way up to present, Ghibli's not even, no one talks about Ghibli, not like they used to when, films were regularly hitting. And because films aren't regularly hitting, there's literally nothing left for, people to talk about. So Ghibli is quickly fading from the zeitgeist. The modern, anime film industry is now so packed with freelancers and that sort of thing. So Ghibli was kind of like a standout because they kind of did the KyoAni thing. They had their own in-house animators, if I'm not mistaken. So those people will all go where the money is because they'll keep doing their thing. They're super dedicated to that. If you can put up with Miyazaki, I think the cool thing is a lot of these great animators will suddenly find that they have way more of a voice than we thought they did.
Well, they do have a voice. It's just nobody pays attention to that because Miyazaki drowns them out. They are distinct. They are distinctive animators. A lot of them, most of them, but everyone just pays attention to the Miyazaki stuff because that's so much more in evidence. It's not like they have no styles, but Miyazaki's style overpowers, just compared, and that's what everyone sees.
You'll get these guys, gals, they'll jump out and they'll do something great. One of them is going to become a smash hit overnight because he won't have to draw the exact way that Miyazaki wanted him to, or something like that. I guess that's kind of my thing.
Or they even could, or that they'll still just show that they're that talented. Yeah, you're right. There's so many great animators there that could become direct. You have a whole bunch of former Ghibli people.
I could see a lot of them doing Bone stuff too, to be honest. Going freaking Mob Psycho Season 3 has a whole shit ton of ex-Ghibli animators because Miyazaki's dead. I don't know. But
I think it's very ambitious that you're thinking that Mob Psycho is going to give a third season.
It's already got a second season slated. I don't think... I think it's going to keep going, but... One Punch Man season 5 will have. It'll be animated by a studio called Neo Ghibli. It'll be great. It'll be Saitama of the Valley of the Wind.
Something I'm kind of excited about is that, like, there's some of the only great character animators in the country, really. I mean, there's KyoAni. Well, Ghibli and KyoAni are like two of the few studios that can even afford to do good character that have that level of talent. And once Ghibli is freed up, then we might be seeing some really great character animation from, well, Your Name had a bunch of good stuff. So I've heard. I still haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I want you to see that because, quite frankly, I did not find that movie to be the cat's meow that everyone was making.
Well, I don't care how the movie is. I just want to see the animation.
No, that's literally what I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, the animation in general, like, I was not wowed.
Really, huh? Even with, Well, I'll be the judge of that.
Yeah, that movie's very disappointing in a lot of different ways. One of which is the animation. But yeah, it's, I don't know, because like the way that you guys are talking, it kind of sounds like, you know, the moment that the king dies, the peasants can go free.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give that impression because they've done great stuff for Miyazaki. That's totally overlooked because Miyazaki outshines. I mean, he just. It's not that he outshines, it's just that nobody cares about anything but Miyazaki.
And that's unfortunate, because there are a lot of moving parts, especially in animation, that gets overlooked, and those people shouldn't be overlooked. And I think that's why we have sites like ours that try to highlight who some of these unknown people who are in the shadows, who work very hard and very digitally and make these beautiful pieces of art. You know, make sure that they get their day in the sun, that they get recognized. And, you know, I think that, you know, as great as a director as Miyazaki is, I think a lot of that auteur kind of mentality can overshadow a lot of the smaller people. And it's one of the reasons why I'm not always as big onto the auteur theory. And it might be why I'm not as big as the Miyazaki films themselves, because it kind of feels like he overshadows so much of a lot of the little things that happens in animation, that it really does feel like it's a lot of his work. Granted, it's really good, but at the same time, you know, I like to have a bit more personality from a lot of the stuff that I'm watching. And I think with that, I think we're going to go ahead and draw this show to a close. Are there any final thoughts that you guys have that you'd like to share?
Well, I recently purchased a second copy of the Nausicaa Roman album. For those of you who don't know what a Roman album is, I want you to kind of think of one of those animation guidebooks. And it's packed full of interviews that, to the best of my knowledge, have not yet been translated. I'm a huge fan of Nausicaa, so these probably will not be done anytime soon, not unless we can get some Patreon backing, like, overnight. So we got some big plans. I'm stockpiling a lot of stuff, but, I mean, unless we can get that support, can't quite get this done in a timely fashion. So please be willing to sign up for the Patreon. Pledge even as little as $1 today. I mean, the more you pledge, the more grateful we are, of course. You know, we just looking to get a lot done. Your pledges help fund the site, you know, help make this podcast reach your ears, help get the translations published there, and, you know, even pays for the domain and that sort of thing. So please make sure to support us any way that you can. We greatly appreciate it, even if it's just passing along this wonderful podcast. You know, we enjoy hearing from you guys, so please make sure to like and subscribe, that sort of thing. And we'll continue to bring you great content in return. I mean, kind of a fair trade if you ask me, but I'll let you be the deciding factor is, I guess, ultimately in your hands. So.
Great. And I'll go ahead and throw out all those links now. If you want to support us on the Patreon, go ahead and search for Wave Motion Canon on Patreon. There is a link in the video, in the description of the video, and whatever area that you're watching this. You can go ahead and sign up for us on iTunes, Stitchers, and all the other podcatchers. We're up there on Wave Motion Canon. The new title of it is the Wave Motion Canon Weekly Anime Podcast. And also, if you search WMC, you should be able to come up with us. But on top of that, we also have the YouTube page, which is Wave Motion Canon. Again, you go ahead and subscribe to us there. We'll show up on your feeds. That way, if you don't want to listen to your iTunes at work, but you want to pop up a YouTube page, I've seen it done. It sounds weird, but people do it. And, listen to the episodes on there while you're at work and whatnot. And again, $1 goes a long way for us. It all goes to back-end stuff. And if one of the things that you, as a listener, get to do is get to send us a question, like Lum Ramayasha's question that we had earlier about what's going to happen with the studio, the future of Ghibli, which led to really great conversation. So, like, if you want to send us questions, we will go ahead and answer them on the show. And again, all you need to do is just give us $1. And, again, all of this goes towards translations, back-end site, keeping up with the podcast and everything else. So, again, we very much appreciate everything that goes towards Patreon. At the end of the show, we'd like to go ahead and take a moment to thank the $10 backers on our Patreon. So at this moment, we'd like to give a special shout out to Aname, Osama_A, Cornelia Natsidi, Chris Magnifito, and Ben Grant. Again, thank you very much for your donation. It means a lot to us and it helps us keep the site going. Again, thank you very much. Alright, well, that will be another episode of the Wave Motion Canon Anime Weekly podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll go ahead and see you guys next week. And in the meantime, go ahead and watch some Miyazaki movies or something like that. Cagliostro is a good one. It's Lupin month still here at the site. Go ahead and watch that one. It's also, in case you haven't heard, the theatrical releases for America. They finally have dates. It's September 14th or something like that. They're on Fandango, so go ahead and check them out whenever those are coming out. So, relevant thing for both Lupin Month and Miyazaki, that film is getting a theatrical release. You should go see it, because it's really good. Granted, it's not during Lupin Month, which sucks, but still, check it out.
Lupin, he's a nice man. But he
gets angry sometimes. Yeah, he's a Lupin the Third.
He uses Walter.
I don't remember the line after that. Just gonna be honest, yep, don't remember it.
We'll see you guys next week.